Joining me now, NBC News Chief Foreign Correspondent Richard Engel, who is live for us in Istanbul, Turkey, and Ibrahim Hooper, Communications Director for the Council on American Islamic Relations. Gentlemen, thank you for joining. Richard, let me start with you. Our colleague Bill Neely described the fear and the fury. There were protests also in Turkey over the weekend. What is your assessment, at least, of how this is being processed, particularly in these Muslim countries?
The protests here in Turkey, about 400 to 500 people attended them, and they were among the most radical protests that Turkey has seen in a long time. These were people who were openly coming out expressing support for Osama bin Laden. They said if the world and the West is standing behind Charlie Hebdo and believes that is an expression of free expression, a defense of free expression, then these people said, we want to come out and say we love Osama bin Laden. So this crisis is appealing to a fringe, a radical fringe in Turkey and some other countries, but not just the fringe, because there's a fundamental misunderstanding here. In the West, in the United States, certainly in France, where I was throughout this Paris Hebdo, the Charlie Hebdo crisis, the I Am Charlie slogan was seen as a defense of freedom of speech, a defense to print whatever you want. But then, with the enormous success of that magazine, millions of copies being sold with yet another insulting image of the Muslim prophet Muhammad on the cover, people in the Islamic world thought, okay, the slogan, I Am Charlie, now really means you are standing with a magazine that continually targets Islam and continues to insult the faith.
Ibrahim, let me bring you in on that. To Richard's point, you have, of course, the fringe or the far more extreme reaction of violence, but those who perhaps are moderate, who say this is not, at least as they view it, a freedom of expression. This is an opportunity to demean their prophet in this way. What are you hearing in the conversations you've had with people who would fall in what is called moderate range there?
Well, I think you need to understand that you can be both in support of expression and be offended by cartoons, as long as that offense and the protests against the offense are peaceful. If you want to write letters to the editor, write editorials, speak out against defamation of the prophet, peace be upon him. But, you know, these things are not mutually exclusive. You can defend freedom of speech, as we have repeatedly, but you can also take offense when religious figures that you revere are insulted and mocked. I mean, it's only common sense.
Richard, let's talk about some of the major meetings taking place. EU foreign ministers will meet this week ahead of the EU summit February 12th. You have Arab League Secretary General Nabil al-Arabi attending talks with 28 EU foreign ministers. This is at a time, as you well know, these raids are still taking place, and we very well see more individuals taken into custody in a number of European countries.
Well, you're seeing arrests in now many different countries, Belgium, France, Greece, Spain. There's been investigations ongoing. So Europe is absolutely on alert, and each time European officials make an arrest, it leads them to new suspects. And the numbers of people that they are now trying to track down are very high. Europol said that around 5,000 Europeans have traveled to Syria and Iraq to fight with radical groups, primarily ISIS, but also an al-Qaeda related group there called Jabhat al-Nusra. That's 5,000 people. Here, where I am in Turkey, Turkish intelligence says that there are 3,000 people in Turkey affiliated to ISIS, in addition to the 700 to 1,000 Turks fighting with ISIS. And these are Turkey's own numbers. Yeah. Some people think they are conservative. But if you add the Turkey's numbers and the Europol numbers, that means there is a large problem of extremists who fought in Syria. Many of them returned from Syria and are now either in the heart of Europe or, like where I am right now, very close to Europe.
Ibrahim, I'd like to, those numbers are staggering that Richard just pointed out, but are you concerned that in the midst of all of that, perhaps there will be people who were brought in wrongfully or swept up in these raids targeted because they are Muslim?
Well, you have to differentiate between legitimate security concerns, and if you find a plot where there's some violence planned, of course, stop that plot. But we're also seeing a tremendous rise in Islamophobia, not only in Europe, but in the United States. We're receiving tremendous increase in hate messages and threats. We're seeing threats to mosques. We're seeing, hate rallies against ordinary Muslim conferences, like over the weekend in Texas. So we're seeing a tremendous rise in the level of Islamophobia. And I would also caution us all on terminology. In the package preceding this segment, the reference was repeatedly made to Islamist, used as a pejorative. And when you start using terms like that as a pejorative, I think it sends a very negative message. It sends a message that anyone involved with Islam in any way is somehow engaging in something they shouldn't be engaging in. So we have to examine the terminology, and we have to, get out of this downward spiral of hostility and mutual mistrust that these horrific incidents can lead to.
Richard, I want to get your thoughts as well on this weekend. Senator Lindsey Graham was asked about Boko Haram in comparison to the thousands of lives that extremist group have taken in Africa versus, and I hesitate to even say versus 17 lives in Paris, but this is the juxtaposition people are making, and the threat of Boko Haram versus what we've seen with extremists in Paris. Let me play what he said.
We should be doing more, but Boko Haram doesn't represent the threat to the homeland, in my view, that ISIL does and al-Nusra and other groups in Syria and Iraq. But if we could show some resolve in Syria and Iraq and reset the table and go after these guys in Syria and Iraq with success, I think it would change the landscape throughout the world. Success anywhere breeds success everywhere.
And it's one of the popular questions on social media, Richard, when people see what happened in France and the same week what happened in Africa with Boko Haram, and ask why not do something about that group.
Well, the question is, what are you going to do about it? And there's a couple of questions. Should the media have spent more time focusing on the atrocities in Boko Haram? Absolutely. Were journalists very busy trying to figure out what was going on in France? Absolutely. So it's about picking priorities, and there can be a lot of discussion about what your priorities are and what you want to tune in to and what you want to listen to. Paris is also
subject?
much. You certainly may.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. We held a vigil yesterday in Washington, D.C. for the victims of Boko Haram. It had some people turn out, but it didn't have anywhere near the level of turnout in reaction to the Charlie Hebdo situation. So we hope that people will pay attention to the massacres, and it's mainly Muslims who are being massacred in Nigeria by Boko Haram. In the same fashion, they are concerned about the situation in France.